Last Thursday, I saw something I wish I hadn't. I was walking home early from school, headphones on, minding my own business. I passed this quiet little coffee shop a few blocks from my house, and I saw my dad. But he wasn't alone. Not just a friendly hug either. This one looked long, emotional, way too close. And here's the thing, it wasn't my mom. At first, I thought maybe it was a coworker or an old friend. But what happened next, what I overheard, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Okay, so I'm 16. I live in a pretty normal neighborhood. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, typical suburban life. I live with my mom, dad, and my little sister, Ellie. From the outside, my family probably looks super put together. My dad's one of those calm, responsible types. Works in IT, always fixes things around the house, barely raises his voice. And my mom. She's a school teacher, warm and organized, always baking something and reminding me to wear socks. And for the longest time, I thought I had one of those solid families, you know? Like, boring, in a good way. But last week, that illusion cracked. I had a half day at school, and instead of taking the bus, I decided to walk home. It was sunny out, and I figured I'd grab a smoothie on the way. There's this little cafe on Maple Street I sometimes pass. It's small, with these big glass windows, and it always smells like cinnamon rolls. I never thought much about it until that day. As I walked by, something made me glance inside. And that's when I saw him, my dad, sitting at a corner table with a woman I didn't recognize. At first, I paused because he never mentioned meeting anyone for lunch. But then he reached across the table and held her hand. And then they stood up and he hugged her. Not a side hug, not a pat in the back hug, a real hug. Intimate, slow, the kind you give someone you've missed, someone you care deeply about. I froze. My stomach turned. I ducked behind a car, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I pulled out my phone and took a picture, not to send it to anyone, but just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. I watched as they talked for a few more minutes. Then the woman gently touched his cheek, and they walked out together. I followed them at a distance, my mind racing with every horrible possibility. They stopped at the end of the street, and I heard him say, "I'll talk to her soon, I promise." And she replied, "Just don't wait too long. She deserves to know." Then she left in a cab, and he stood there for a minute, looking down at his phone, before walking back toward his car. I ran home, literally ran, locked myself in my room. My thoughts were everywhere. Was he cheating? Were my parents getting a divorce? Was that woman his secret girlfriend? I didn't want to believe it. This was my dad, the guy who always kissed mom goodbye, who grilled burgers on Sundays, who watched cartoons with Ellie and carried her to bed when she fell asleep. I felt betrayed and sick. I couldn't even look him in the eye when he got home that night. The next few days were torture. I kept replaying the scene in my head. My mom was acting totally normal, smiling, cooking, planning Ellie's birthday party. It made it worse. She had no idea. And here I was, carrying this secret like a bomb in my chest. I didn't know whether to tell her, or confront him, or just pretend I never saw anything. But the breaking point came when I overheard my mom on the phone with her friend, laughing and saying, "We're coming up on our 20th anniversary next month. Can you believe it?" That hit me like a truck. 20 years, 2 decades of marriage. And he was out, hugging someone else. So I did it. I waited until one night, when everyone else was asleep. I walked into the living room, where my dad was watching TV. My hands were shaking, but I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Who was the woman you hugged outside the cafe last Thursday?" He blinked, slowly turned off the TV, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his face. Not anger, not frustration. Fear. He asked me to sit down, and then he told me the truth. Not the truth I was expecting. Not the affair, not the lies, not the betrayal. He said, "Her name's Grace, and she's your sister's biological mother." I was stunned. "Wait, what?" I asked. "Ellie's not adopted," he sighed. "No, Ellie's our daughter, but not your mom's." He went on to explain that years before he met my mom, before I was even born, he was in a short relationship with someone named Grace. They broke up. No drama. Just young, wrong timing. They moved on. But a few years later, when he was married to Mom and they were trying for a second child, Grace came back, pregnant. She said she couldn't raise the baby and didn't want to go through the system. She asked if my dad and his wife, my mom, would take the baby. And they did, quietly, privately. Only a few people knew. They raised Ellie as their own, and she is. My mom loves her like no one else. But apparently, Grace stayed in the background, never interfering, but always nearby, just watching, making sure Ellie was okay. And now that Ellie was getting older, she wanted to reconnect. Not as mom, not to take her back, just to introduce herself and maybe someday have a relationship. My head was spinning. My heart was too. I didn't know what to feel. Relief that he wasn't cheating. Confusion, sadness. I asked him why he didn't just tell me. Why he didn't tell Mom. And that's when he dropped the real twist. He said Mom knew. She'd known since day one. They had agreed to keep it quiet until Ellie was old enough to understand. They just didn't think it would come out like this. That night, I cried in my room. Not because I was angry, but because I realized how little we sometimes know about the people we live with. How much sacrifice and quiet love goes on behind the scenes. I thought I saw betrayal. But what I really saw was something way more complicated. Something kind and painful and human. The next day, I asked Mom about it. She didn't deny it. She just hugged me and said, "Families aren't always simple, sweetheart. But love always is." And she was right. A week later, we had Grace over for tea. Ellie still doesn't know the full story. Not yet. But one day, she will. And when she does, I hope she understands that she wasn't born from a mistake. She was born from a decision. A choice to love. A choice that 2 women, one who gave her life, and one who raised her, made together. Sometimes, what we think is betrayal is actually a story we don't fully understand yet. People carry histories, secrets, and choices that aren't always black and white. Life is messy like that. But if you look deeper, beyond the surface, beyond the assumptions, you might find that the truth is more powerful than the lie you feared. So, before you judge, before you panic, ask, listen, because love doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it looks like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like sacrifice. And sometimes it shows up in a hug. That means way more than you could ever imagine. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart or taught you something new, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. More inspiring stories are just a click away.